exciting and a lot of good lectures. The list is super long and it's 2 compacted days, but this first plenary session, it's 4 major keynote speakers. It's really some amazing professionals and academics that will share their ideas of landscape architecture at the IFLA World Congress here in Oslo at Common Ground. The layout of this session is that we'll have one after each other, and when the first is finished, we will try really to encourage you and to use the opportunity to ask questions. I know it's not always easy to raise your hand when you're somebody back over there and say that I actually have a question, but we have some fantastic volunteer students that will run around and give you the microphone. Because it's all streamed and we want to hear the questions to the world and also at stage. So please use the opportunity to ask questions and reflect about the lecture of the excellent keynote speakers that we're so happy to have here in Oslo. We really hope you will enjoy the plenary session, and I'm really excited and thrilled to introduce the first keynote speaker, which we just heard is the winner of the 2019 Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe Award. And Kathryn Gustavson, she grew up in Yakima in Washington in the US, and she started to study applied arts at University of Washington. But she moved over to New York City to graduate from Fashion Institute of Technology. She moved to Paris to be a fashion designer, but made another good move. She moved into landscape design, and she graduated as a landscape architect in Versailles. We are really excited that she has taken her design skills and her design philosophy into landscape architecture. Her creation of sculpture form is transformed into landscape, shapes, and environment that makes a change of importance in landscape architecture projects around the world. We are honored and excited to have her here at the Common Ground and as the winner of Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe Award 2019. The title of Kathryn's lecture is Where Do We Come From and Where Do We Go? Please welcome Kathryn on stage.
Are we going to turn those lights down a little bit, please? Okay, hi. Yeah, where do we come from and where do we go? When they asked me to come and speak here, they said, well, why don't you tell us about your philosophy? And I said, whoa, that takes a while. So I come from not me being all alone. I have 2 beautiful bureau offices. This is the first European office with Neil Porter, called Gustafson Porter and Bowman. Mary Bowman is, you'll see, and 2 new partners, Sibylla and Donica. And the second office is in Seattle, GGN, 3 women-owned office that is started in 2000. So I started my first office in Paris in 1980, but I don't do all these projects by myself, as you can imagine. Great teams, wonderful teams to work from. Where do we come from? Where do I come from? Is here. I come from a desert. I come from a high plateau desert called Yakima, Washington, that grows apples. And we have a term we call in Yakima, and here you can see how when we have irrigation, the different of green, if not, it's Artemisia. And we call it Campbell's soup, just add water. And water we add. And it comes from the Army Corps of Engineers in the 30s, creating reservoirs and canals that come all the way down from the Cascade Mountains. And you can see the irrigation line. This is where it's irrigated, and this is where it isn't. And so all my youth was playing in these channelized ditches with my dogs and brothers and sisters. And now we've transformed into wines from apples, and there's still many apples. But it's an agricultural place that has very much a controlled landscape within a very natural landscape. So from there, I went to New York City and went into fashion design and the creative arts. And from there I moved, of course, to Paris, as you heard, and got tired of the fashion world somewhat. I still like it a lot. But Versailles and the École Nationale Supérieure de Paysage fascinated me. It fascinated me this way Le Nôtre controlled the land. It fascinated me like my mountains. It had horizon lines, like the 100 Steps. You see a horizon, you want to go up there, you want to see what's on top of it. Landscape does that. And so between this built landscape and the natural landscape, there's all these worlds that are together. One of the interesting things is I was living in Paris, and every morning I would go down these steps at 7 in the morning to go to school because the train was on the other side of the Seine here to go to Versailles. And then every night I would come back at 7 o'clock. So I got to live this landscape when no one was there in the morning, and then tons of people were coming home from work in the evening. Absolutely beautiful. So it's one of my favorite landscapes. Then in school, I met this man named Jacques Esgar, and he actually, his work, I remember standing on that mount right there and saying, okay, I can do this. I can do landscape architecture. It's sculpture. And he did some of the most beautiful sculptural pieces in Paris. This is Bois de Vincennes. Look at those shapes. They're absolutely beautiful. Look at the size of a child against that slope. Then, obviously, as time started studying other artists like Noguchi, how did he carry art into land movement? What is that crossover? Intellectually, some of the land movement people like Dennis Oppenheim, I absolutely loved his work. This is called parallel stress, and it's what the body and land do together. Then one of my other favorites is this is called the gas station for ideas. So it's actually, you come in when you're out of ideas, you come in and get pumped back up and get new ideas. And then Igor Mitraj, who is a sculptor from Italy, but actually worked in Paris, was the first person who saw my models, and he said, what are you doing with them? And I said, I throw them away. He said, no, you don't. You make them better. And you keep them. And so he came from Carrara with all the tools, and he taught me to sculpt. So I've had a lot of very, really dear people in my life in the arts. But I think also artists define landscape in what they see as beautiful and why they see it as beautiful. So when I look at painting, this one, for example, why is it great? We have prospect. We have a view of the water. We know where the light is. We're on a voyage someplace. Everything, and we're being protected from our back. Matisse. Matisse talking about 3 kinds of water. I have channelized water, which is in the river. I have water that a fish is in my apartment, and then I have water that goes into a plant in my apartment that I'm growing. And so it's this life cycle that Matisse found fascinating, the way he put the fish next to the channel of water where the fish never was going to be able to go. And so there's these contradictions within our life also. Another Matisse that I absolutely love, you know there's a void. You know there's a cliff. You know you're on the top because there's nothing beyond, right, in this painting. So there's destination, there's desire, there's anticipation, all by that one movement. You also know where the sun is coming from, and you have just a little bit of fear because you have a shadow you have to walk through. So all those things an artist has painted, and that means they are a way of perceiving a landscape. You look at a Monet, all about safety. Why is it about safety? You have the homestead, you have the cows, you have the burial ground and the mountain that protects it, and everything's soft hues. You know you're home, you know everything's okay. Monet was fabulous. But then you get Picasso, and he tells you how to use shadow and light and how to create form just with shadow. And so he's a great. For me, Cézanne is amazing because, again, he creates anticipation in his landscape. Again, it's the void beyond the cliff. Why do I want to climb those rocks? I want to see what's on the other side. And then this is Dora Carrington. It's safety again, safety. The mountains are holding you. You have all your animals, you have everything inside, you have your fence protecting you. And then this one I absolutely love by Kiefer. This is us being our boldest, our most wanting to be out there, being part of the landscape, being on top of that rock, seeing that sunset, being completely in harmony with our landscape. So these are what have influenced me and many, many other artists. I put this together for a lot of you know my work, so I'm going to go really fast, but it's for people who don't. It's pretty chronological. I mispronounce absolutely everything, but I can fait dans deux langues. So I started by sculpting. Igor Mitraj was much part of it, and doing stormwater management. And had the first green roofs being done for Shell Petroleum. We have 5 layers of ground underneath. Actually, this project is where the term "sky is mine" came from, because with Denis Valode, the architect, we're trying to define where I stopped and where he started, because I have all these emergency exits, ventilation, and smoke return. I said, listen, if there's sky, it's mine. If there's a roof, it's yours. So that's how the contract was set up, and it's stuck with us ever since. So from there, my first headquarters to my first plaza with Every, where it's the first time I put, and I think anybody at this point, put jets on pavement, and then you turn the jets off for events. But I kept going back to infrastructure. I love the big freeway things, the big land movement, and this is Marseille. Just a sketch. They wanted 1 million cubic meters of earth put down because they're digging a tunnel. So we did some walls, and we filled up those walls, and we did stormwater management and working in clay. But this is the first time I moved from clay to digital. And the digital, I can thank Wolf Preeks for pushing me to do it. And it's the first time that I did 3D software, and you can see the date, it was a while ago. But it's a wonderful place that it now is a big stormwater management for the freeway. Before it looked like this, and now it looks like this. You can see the size of the truck. Those are 12-meter high walls. And so we do have 1 million cubic meters of earth behind them. But it's become an emblem in Marseille of how much impermeabilization is happening on the freeway, because these are the watermarks that happens during a downpour. From there, New York City called. I said, I'm going to vertical file this one. They said, draw anything. I said, okay. And they liked it. So American Museum of Natural History was the first scrim. That's that 5 millimeters of water that you can walk on. And also you can use it to bounce light, so you can reduce your lighting load by using the lighting from the building to light your landscape. And from that, more scrims, more building lighting to really carry all that light and make it an entire room of light outside. Obviously in the city, not out in the open where there's fauna and flora, but a place to create a real atmosphere. This is Seattle Opera. Then the biggest park, the new park for me, was Amsterdam. It was a place to try to understand how tight everything is in Amsterdam, and I'm American from a desert, and so how do you get those two people to kind of talk to each other? And Amsterdam loved, for the first time, they had a big open space to play in, and I learned a lot about native vegetation with the Dutch. They were absolutely amazing on how they embrace the ecology and embrace the world of green. So from that, as you know, Trident Memorial, and the Princess Diana Memorial has been a wonderful success, but it was a huge learning curve because for the first time we did CNC cutting of stone in 2004. We were the first to do it on a huge scale. We had no idea what we were doing. But it was the challenge, it was the timing, it was everything was coming together, the right stone cutters, the right consultants. We called it the A-team. It's really the ability to carve stone this way and have water become joyful and changing constantly has been really one of important part of my life now. But then there's all these other things I love to do, like, can you do a pylon? Well, sure, why not? You know, and so they are only 50 meters tall. They span 300 meters, the cable length. I had to learn a lot about electricity, but that's okay. Tried doing steel furniture. This is called the Maggie bench. We did it for Chicago. So we know what we call Chicago, right? So Chicago's Batman. And so Batman is Gothic, and then it's also historical. And so the Maggie is Mayor's wife was named Maggie. It really should be called Judith or something a little bit more Gothic, but it's still the Maggie bench. Doing a new group of furniture called Urban Edge. Everything moves, everything rotates, so you can make people rotate together or rotate apart in their chairs. You can sit 2 people or 1 people. The Stella table that goes along with it, so you feel like you're in a living room outside. Or the Charlie bench, which is basically a picnic bench that allows 2 wheelchairs to come to either end and seats 8 people total. Then I discovered Washington, D.C. God, what a city. Go to Washington, it's just amazing. All the museums are free by the Smithsonian. There's great restaurants, there's great parks. You got the National Mall you can go running on. I'm a huge fan. We do have an office there now. And one of the first projects was National Portrait Gallery, where I was able to convince a museum director that they could actually have natural elements within a courtyard inside of a museum. And so Foster & Partner built a new roof, and so we brought a scrim into this space that is really reflecting both the historical facades and the modern roof. And it's also an event space, but it's set on such a flat slope, it really is an absolute mirror that's constantly moving. And man really gets to feel like he's walked on water. So doing that, also looking at L'Enfant's plan, it turns out L'Enfant's plan from 1791 had a fountain right at this corner of New York. And we're doing a new development of 6 city blocks that had a convention center, one of those super blocks that blocked everything. So we re-put in the grid and found L'Enfant, we put in L'Enfant's grid and found that he had a fountain there. So we did the Star Fountain and the Star Plaza here and made it have places for people to sit, having movement of water, something very tactile for people, and how it at the same time, DC is hot in the summer, lots of shade, lots of water movement, lots of different spaces, bigger spaces, smaller spaces, and it's 6 city blocks, so I'm just showing you a little piece of it. It was quite something for me to work on 6 city blocks in a city like DC. We've been able to revitalize this area completely. And it's a place where people really love to join and be part of, even at 7 in the morning to get fit. So people have appropriated it. So things like this, we integrated in design steps. The water moves here, it's off at 7 in the morning, but we put in these stages around the site. People just come, they start setting up, people start moving in, they do 7 in the morning. By 8 o'clock, the cafe is moving out its table, everybody else is off to work, so it's constantly changing as a space. And then the American Museum, the National Museum, African American History and Culture, which is sandwiched between the White House, the Washington Monument, and the American art. This is the most political project up till now I'd ever done in my life. I have never seen so many committees. It took us 9 years to build this. I've learned a lot of patience, but also restraint, because you're sitting in front of a lot of different monuments. But wanting to represent the African Americans, one of the ways in finding different pieces in the work to make sure everything has meaning, that it's attaching to what it's doing. So this is called the murmurs, and you know the birds, how they move as swarms. And it was the inspiration for the South Water feature that I'll show you in a minute. But those birds, they know, if you watch those swarms, they all know where each other is. And they all move together as a mass. The African Americans have this rhythm and culture, that their culture is so rich and they're so woven together that these birds for me represented that activity and that movement. So from there, my sketch to making it a reality as a plan and putting in inscriptions from different writers, African American writers. So from that, it transforms to this. And the fountain has two parts. One is movement, agitation, and the other one's calm. You notice they never touch each other. So the two waters never touch, but they come to rejuvenate and allow these two pieces, which is part of the African American community, to exist. And it is at the base, the south facade. And then my wall, which is a security wall on Constitution, has become the party place of Washington with the food trucks. And it's big, it's 5 meters wide, it's polished black granite, it's muscular, it's strong, it's a plinth for the building. People just get on it, they eat, they party. It's like 200 meters long. It's huge. And no idea, just wanted a big, beautiful black wall for a big, beautiful black museum about the African Americans. And guess what? It's become part of the entire environment for Washington, D.C. The other project that I just finished, so chronological, is Valencia. I could talk an hour about this, but basically it's about food. Valencia feeds all of Europe with its huertas, and the huertas are these huge industry of food. And then there is a history of ceramics. So the concept was to do a series of bowls, and the whole site is a bowl where this alqueria, which is out in the huerta, is where food is transformed and stored. We have an original one here with an art center here. Well, it used to be for the train tracks because the trains ran straight through here and cut off the neighborhoods. But just as a concept of bowls and the north-south entry here to connect all these neighborhoods that had been cut off by the train here. And there are natural bowls called yulas in sand where all the water goes and goes into the aquifer. So Valencia has this huge natural aquifer. So it has sun, heat, food, and water. Doesn't get much better. So wanting to create space for these bowls, many of you know I use lots of land movement. And so this is the land movement of the bowls. So we only have built this piece here. So this is the art center with a big art center plaza. And this is the huerta, which is about food, the history of food with a restaurant here that grows the food. This is all the spices and flowers for perfume for that industry. This is called the Romantic Valley. These are two very high points you're going to see. And this is the children's bowl with the children's shed and play equipment and fields here. So very quickly, this is the huerta. This is the art center that used to be train. We have a new swimming pool in here. This is a restaurant here. And then you can start to see the floral gardens go here. Look at this walkway. This walkway is 9 meters above this. This is 2 meters below that. How did we do it? We built a new type of green wall that is sustainable. That means it has soil. It has huge pockets of soil, and each pocket drains into the next one. And they have created this retaining wall. This is after planted for 8 months. One is to the north, one is to the south, totally different vegetation. And then as you descend into it, this is the Romantic Valley with water carrying you through. And something I hardly ever do, I did plant everything in pink. On the other side, this is the south wall. You can see how different the vegetation is. And this is the children's playground. And then from there, we move up to the art center. And the biggest compliment I got on this is somebody said it looks like Valencia. So for me, I was very happy. All of the water turns off to have markets, but of course kids are going to play and people are going to dream at night. So from there, where do I go, or where do we go? Many of you know I've just received probably the biggest commission of my life. It's 50 hectares in the center of Paris, around the Eiffel Tower. It took us a year of competition to win. We are working very hard at it right now, but we're transforming this area completely from Trocadéro all the way to École Militaire. We're taking out all cars the whole length. This is a roundabout. We're doing an amphitheater here, but we're also doing historical restoration throughout, making it easier for that 10 million visitors to get to. Right now, it's a mess. It's over-compacted. It's trodden. It's broken. So a lot of it is historical restoration that we're doing in 2 phases. First phase, what you see here, where a new bridge. It's an old bridge that we're making for no cars, but for pedestrians. 2 new plazas here, redoing all the historical walls and vegetation, and making it a place people can use, whether they're neighbors or they're visitors throughout the season, that they have something absolutely amazing to walk across the Seine and feel like they're not fighting the trucks and the pollution and everything. And also a new pavé under the Eiffel Tower that's super simple, just keeps all the historical access, is in granite, is indestructible. You can roll a truck on it, but it still looks good. Making sure all the lines for the Tour Eiffel are back here and not in here. Right now you sit and you wait 4 hours, changing all the ticketing. So that is where I'm going. I think the past is really important. History is really important. I don't want us to do like the 60s, 70s, and 80s and start ripping it out. We can do new things next to it. We can invent with it. We need to really think about humanity and diversity and how different people embrace a landscape and work with a landscape, and obviously our future is ecology. So with that note, it may be straight, but you can make it creative. So that's all. There she is.
Thanks a lot for a wonderful journey through a lot of your work. And I think what you...
Time warp.
It is. But what you started to say that, I mean, where do you come from? And how did that actually also relate back to a lot of the work you're doing? And I think this amazing journey that you've been doing from fashion design to landscape architecture, from something that is very close to your body to something that is extremely large. And the fluidity, and I think the terrain, how you work with the terrain is almost like see how a textile actually can flow.
I think it's the mountains I grew up with.
I'm sure it is.
They're all naked, you know, and they're all...
And they will always come back to you in the work you're doing,
Yeah.
which is super fascinating.
Yeah.
So I would really like to invite the audience to actually use the opportunity to ask questions to Kathryn. So I really hope you have been thinking of that or have something that you have been reflecting on in her lecture. I know there is a lot of people out there that actually really want to ask questions. This is the opportunity. Yes, please. Okay, we need a microphone over here. Maria, you
they're
can
getting
do
the
it.
microphone.
Yes.
One of the things that's throughout the work is water is controlled. And I think that is something now I'm working on, is the uncontrol of water. So,
please.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to see you have been working around the world. And I think it's a challenge for landscape architects. How do you deal with the identity of each place? Because even landscape architecture, the landscape relates us with our identity. So how do you deal with that?
we do a lot of research. As I said, Valencia looks like Valencia. the Eiffel Tower, looks like the Eiffel Tower. I think embedding yourself almost completely within a place and really getting that pulse of the place. What I'm going to end up bringing always is some of my tools. One is how I control water, how I sculpt forms, but those things cannot dominate the essence of the place. They need to become the essence of the place. And I think that is not to duplicate things without, I mean, obviously we all duplicate some things, but what form do they take? How do they take? How are they used within each culture of each society? Anybody else? There's one woman. Oh. You both had green shirts on.
Okay, thank you for such amazing lecture. And there is three things that you mentioned in the end of the slide about past, present, and futures. It's about history, humanity, and ecology. And I just have a simple question. From that three, which one is your first priority to do design, in the process? Thank you.
I don't create priorities like that. I mean, we design as layers because it's so complex what we're trying to do as fitting into society, technically doing it, artistically doing it, humanly do it. If you give one thing a priority, your design will fail. And so you can't give a priority. I think there's actually many more layers than that you actually have to pay attention to. That's what makes it so difficult. The last thing you can do is work fast. Work slow. Take your time. You do it fast, you're going to get it wrong. So at least I'll get it wrong. So there was a woman right behind you.
Yes, I think...
One more?
One more? Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your very inspiring presentation. I just have a quick question. Right now, in India, you spoke about Washington, D.C., and you spoke about Paris, and now you have New Delhi. Similar planning, for those who know. So right now, there is a sort of a new scheme being discussed in Delhi for Lachin's Delhi, New Delhi, the capital city. And the challenge there is that landscape architects are not part of the terms of reference. They're not even required for that scheme or for us to. So we're all kind of, caught saying, oh my God, it's only about planners and architects and urban designers. And landscape architecture as a profession has sort of not been brought into the terms. So I want just some thought from you. I'm sure in your journey, maybe in the 80s or 90s, you may have encountered such a situation, and how did you bring yourself to the fore as a representative of the profession?
I think it's people like the IFLA that do that, that make it apparent. And it's the IFLA, the SLAs, it's the different organizations. Their role is to get to governments and to have a formation, not only that our schools have diversity in them, but also that there are schools and that they are recognized. Spain just got recognized, 3 years ago? So you gotta fight, put on some muscle. Just go out there, it's just, don't back down, No, I'm serious, all of us, we need to get out to schools more. There are not enough teenagers that are saying landscape architecture. We need to do those school things where you expose what you do. You've got to get them excited. You can't stay in your corner. Our schools are not being filled enough. We're losing people. So I think that right now, if we're going to be a profession that actually is truly the most important profession in the world right now, is because we cover everything. From climate change to social diversity to ecology, and depending where you are in that world, we need this to be known, and we need kids to be curious about it. and about the innovation within it and about what they can be part of the society. So I think that that's your only way forward. Yes. Okay.
I think that was a super good conclusion and really to announce to everybody that we have to go out there and fight. So thanks a lot, Kathryn,
Thank
and
you, everybody.
congratulations.